Well, it's officially been 20 years since this government evicted people from a piece of land, 2,500 hectares of land in Buende district. 4,000 people were rendered homeless by this government. Soldiers were sent in, they raised down buildings, everyone was evicted, and we ended up with Kaweri coffee plantation that is owned by a German investor. That is, what's the name of the German investor? Newman Group. That's what we are going to be talking about, because it's been a story that has been in the news since 2001, August 17th. Today is August 17th, 2021. So meaning it's been 20 years since these individuals were actually evicted. March 17th, around 2017, there was a court case and they won. 37 billion Uganda shillings was awarded to these evictees as compensation. But then guess what? Government, yes, repealed that decision, meaning we are still in court. And that's why we are having Derek Lutalo, a lawyer representing a network of public interest lawyers. We also do have someone from FIAN Uganda. That's none other than Rehema Namaganda Bavuma, to make sense of this case. It's been in court for a long time, so I'm sure you still want to get the details before we get into the nitty-gritty. So very good morning, Rehema and Derek Lutalo.
Very good morning.
This case, since August 17th, 2001, it's been a long time waiting for justice. Yeah. 20 good years. So tell us what happened. What transpired on August 17th, 2001? Okay.
So in August, between 17th to around 21st, the army evicted approximately 4,000 people from Mubende in Madudu sub-county. Those 4,000 inhabitants of about 4 villages in that sub-county, they were evicted to create space to a company, Kaweri Coffee Company. Kaweri Coffee is a subsidiary of another big company called Newman Cafe Group. This is a very huge company that is present in about more than 26 countries, and it's based in Germany, in Europe. And it has, I think under it has over 50 companies. Small. So Kaweri Coffee is one of them.
Is this what they do in every jurisdiction they go to? They just evict people and put up coffee plantations, or this is just
I can't say
an unfortunate incident that happened in Uganda?
I've not followed what they do in other countries, but this is what happened in this case.
So government says we have an investor, yes, Newman Group, headed by David Newman. So they come into Uganda, they create a local company, Kaweri Coffee Plantations. They use the government, the soldiers go to this plantation, or piece of land, 2,500 hectares, evict 4,000 people. Until now, they are looking for justice. Until now.
It's been 20 years. Actually, today marks 20 years since they were evicted. And you know, so that the court process is still going on for all those years. And we know that justice delayed is justice denied, they tell us. So we don't know what the fate of these people is, but it's been too long. And the manner in which they were evicted was, of course, a lot of their human rights were violated.
Indeed.
People were beaten.
When I say government, people might think Romy is just putting words in the mouth of Rehema and Lutalo. But no. Who evicted these people? And how many were they?
The state evicted the people. I mean, the lawyer will tell us the legal implications therein, but they were forcefully evicted, and people were beaten, of course. The army was involved. Houses were burnt. Food, crops, and animals were destroyed, and people moved, and many of them still reside in the peripherals, near just outside the
You know the funny bit I read about that story? Some of the evictees are working on the same plantation where they live.
Exactly, because they don't have any land anymore, and they are still waiting for this justice. One of the options left is to work on this same plantation, and you can imagine how emotionally and psychologically draining.
You realize that takes us back to the era of slave trade. White people come in, get us off our land, and then they hire us to work or till the same land.
Exactly. Of course, I can't say they're working as slaves, because it's they are they have a working relationship with Kaweri, but it's a very sad state. I mean, you being evicted from this piece of land and then find somewhere else to stay. You don't have land to grow your food anymore, and then this person calls you to work here for a pay.
The funny thing about this story is that they tried to forcefully evict all these individuals. The unscrupulous men were actually rounded up, put into the jail system, but they escaped. And then went back to evict people the same time. We do know that the people who are on this land in Mubende district were actually relocated to Mitiana municipality. But also another gentleman, businessman, George Kawesi, also evicting them.
And,
double tragedy.
Of course, now people are scattered a bit, and you can imagine 20 years is too long. Some have even died. Some of the people now following up the case are the children. Some are grandchildren of the people that were evicted. So some of the people that are attending this court process are not even those that were evicted, but their parents were evicted. Some of them were so young, 5 years, 3 years, and they are now still in court following up this process. But even the land where they are now is not theirs, so they are still being evicted. And this case has also sparked of multiple similar land conflicts.
Of course, Derek Rutalo is going to be telling us whether or not this land belongs to the Buganda kingdom, because that's largely what I've been reading, that we've evicted people from a piece of land that actually belongs to the Kabaka of Buganda. So you're going to be telling me about that case, Block 99. And yes, that is Derek Rutalo. He's a lawyer with Network of Public Interest Lawyers. We're going to be getting the issue or court redress. What are the leaders right there saying? We do know that on March 17th, 2017, they were awarded some 37 billion Uganda shillings, courtesy of the good work of Peter Kayira, the lawyer who was handling this case. But then government repealed this case, and the 37 billion shillings was actually taken back. Bring us up to speed with the court processes.
Thank you so much. So I'll toe a very delicate line, considering that the matter is in court, and I am bound as an advocate by the sub judice rule B. So, but I'll speak to what we have done in terms of finding a solution, in terms of access to remedy for the persons that were evicted. Peter Kayira was not a lawyer, but was one of actually the lead plaintiff, putting the group together, and many others. So they've led the fight, and our former colleague, Counsel Bali Kudembe, took on the matter. It went through court process, and a word was made. And then, of course, when court passes judgment, delivers judgment, each party has a right to appeal. The aggrieved party has a right to appeal. The parties appealed, and court ordered a retry. What it meant is that you go back and try the case afresh. There were things that probably did not go right, and that is where we picked up the case. In 2019, this set of persons come to the Network of Public Interest Lawyers, of course introduced by other partners like FIAN and ActionAid. So they came to us, and at the Network of Public Interest Lawyers, we put up a team of about 6 lawyers now to handle this case, because it's going to be retried. You have to prepare, and then don't get it wrong again, because that will not lead to justice or delay justice further. So this team is comprised of about 6 lawyers, and we were represented through JW Advocates, now AL Advocates is our convening law firm. And we put the pleadings together, but in the process, government came up with a proposal to say, can we settle this matter? And we know that
I remember Rugunda was involved. That is around 2019. Actually, later came out of that.
Actually, government has been involved from the office of the Attorney General, mostly, because those are the lawyers representing.
But it seems like close to the electioneering period, they became serious after that. I saw the Prime Minister saying this is becoming largely too political, and we need to handle it before the electioneering period in 2020. Go ahead. Maybe
it was a coincidence for us as a legal team handling.
Yes,
but all I can tell you is that the process commenced, and we had to do a back and forth over 6 meetings, going back to Mubende, now taking these people through what a settlement would be, what shape would it take to pick those who voluntarily wish to settle, because government committed to say they made different offers. We will offer this 2 billion, then they increase it until the point when government said we are going to settle the entire claim of these people. We will look at your claim. We will not go into who was given what compensation before, who was resettled where. We will just compensate you so that we end this matter. And we felt that that was a welcome gesture. So for us who are handling this case of 258 families of those 4,000 came to us to say we wish to settle. And we went through the rigors. We had to go to Mubende, refer to another judge again to sit in and see that he presides over the mediative process. It's been a back and forth, and finally I can say we are good to go. On Monday we will be in court to present that consent that has been polished, and of course it involves all the parties, Kaweri, the state, and the plaintiffs, the parties who sued, whom we are representing, and we hope it will go well. Along the way, other persons over 40 people have also reached out to say, how do we join the consent process? Because some are tired, and there are those who prefer to say, I will litigate. I think I can get more from my case rather than settling the claim I put before court, and that is also within their right. So we will push the processes as they come through, and we'll first get the settlement out of the way to ensure that we do not delay this any further.
You speak with a lot of, there's no despair in your voice, Lutalo. There's hope in your voice. But then this is a case that has taken 20 years. August 17th. The judge could only hear the case in 2003. July. Here we are, 2021. And you really have hope that this time round, the defendants will not do what they did before in the years that preceded this case?
When a proposal comes from the opposite party, it is welcome. If the process had been engineered by us or by us representing the plaintiffs, it would have been a bit different.
But do you feel like the defendants are frustrating this whole court process?
For the settlement process, they are not frustrating it because it's been a back and forth. We go back with a draft, we go through it, and they say, let's go tease this out. Let's get this information, reach out to them again. So about hope, that is all we live for. Otherwise, as a Christian, I would have given up on Christ coming back. So it's 2000 and also years.
Yes.
And we hope and we believe it will be settled. And the assurance we have is it will be this financial year.
This financial year.
The commitment is the settlement will be done this financial year. And that comes after the election period. So if the elections ended and the process is still pushed forward, I still believe in it. We have the hope. If it works out, the better. If it doesn't, we will move on with the case.
Derek Lutalo, he is a lawyer with Network of Public Interest Lawyers. He's focusing on the legal side of this conversation, the Kaweri evictions in 17th of August 2001. Rehema, what she's largely doing is to focus on the individuals who were affected. How have they been coping all these years? Now that COVID-19 is here, I do not have a home. I'm actually homeless and I'm out there looking for a place to put my, head and children so that they can be able to survive during this COVID-19 pandemic. So you do have people who are working and they struggle too much. Now, what if you are not working, you do not have a home? That is double tragedy. Rehema, the livelihoods of these individuals. Bring us up to speed. How are they coping?
Thank you. We have been to Mubende several times since then, together with NetPil lawyers, together with Action Aid, or sometimes only FIAN. And I can tell you, the housing situation, for example, is really bad. Like people, of course, had to improvise, put up temporary structures, and they are not doing well. You find someone in a very small structure with just one room, and there are maybe 8 people within that one small room. This is not unique to these people in Mubende. I mean, we know that in Uganda, this is common, especially in many rural areas where poverty is high. But what makes it bad is for those who had their houses, permanent houses on this land, to start living in these tiny huts for 20 years, and we are still counting, maybe, save for the hope that the lawyer has given us. But we know that there are also those that are saying no to this compensation. They are saying, no, it's not enough, it's not sufficient. It's been a long time. We lost a lot of things. We need to be compensated better. So we don't know what their fate is. Then the food. These were farmer communities, or these are farmer communities, people that feed on the food that they grow themselves. They are not traders, like they exchange a lot of money. So now they don't have land where to grow food. You find someone, their house is here, they don't even have where to put a latrine. They were given just a very small piece to put shelter. So they have to go and work in the coffee plantation and get the little money they get to buy food. And when the season like now, it's not so easy to, so they are paid as depending on how much coffee they are able to collect. So when you collect little, then you're paid little. I mean, not to go so much into how much they are actually paid.
Please do. Please do. Please do.
Romeo, that's...
They are counting on you to do that.
I think we need one of the evictees to testify to that. But I know that they are really paid very low. We know the wages in Uganda of casual laborers. So their survival is very, very difficult. Many of them are saying that their children are not able to go to school because of this eviction. They're still saying that this eviction resulted in two children dropping out of school even after 20 years. And we can't deny that, because, I mean, for a farmer, growing food is the source of livelihood. It's from that food they grow that they feed, they take children to school, that they get treatment. Apart from housing and food, churches were destroyed. And the other thing that people cry for is their graves.
I see.
Many of their graves were graves of their grandparents and relatives were in the coffee plantation, the place where now the coffee plantation is, and they were destroyed, and they are crying about that. They want to remove their deceased parents, and they don't have any right. They are not allowed to do that. So those are some of the rights that have been violated, and we think that government should come out to quicken the justice process for these people. So bbecause when justice takes too long, people lose interest also. You can imagine that some could have given up, some could have given into this compensation even when they think it's not fair. But I mean, it's too long. We are tired. For how long should this go on? Some are very old. They can even hardly come from Mubende to Kampala to attend court.
Rehema, that's what we were largely talking about here. It's an argument that took center stage on Morning at NTV, especially when leaders were saying they're going to be focusing on the urban areas with this relief distribution, the 100,000 Uganda shillings, because their big argument was that the people in the villages, Mubende and so forth, are growing some food. But then we said, what if they do not have land?
Exactly.
To till.
Exactly.
So this was also an issue that they should have looked at. Vulnerable people within Mubende, especially this group of people, 4,000.
Exactly.
They were vulnerable, but they did not get any help because we thought they were growing food.
Exactly. That's a big assumption that people in rural areas are growing food. But we are forgetting the rate at which land grabbing is happening in Uganda is so high, and so many people are affected.
Especially in the rural areas?
Exactly, in the rural areas, and especially within the central region, I think, probably because of the fertility of the land, and so it's very attractive to investors. But I think even when an eviction has to happen, first of all, the manner in which it happens, there is nothing that should justify force to kill people, to destroy houses, to destroy property. But even when it happens, then compensation and justice and fairness should be accessible to people.
Indeed. Derek Lotalo, let's talk about justice and fairness. These individuals were evicted by the army. 2001, August 17th. Collusion has continued between security operatives and the local leaders to actually wreak havoc on these individuals. The collusion of the leaders and these land grabbers that is taking center stage. Bring us up to speed with this case.
Of course, for every land grab, there has to be a bit of collusion between the powers that be and the persons that are fronted. This is happening not only in the rural areas. You saw, churches being raised down, and of course, the powers that be are always involved. But for us, when such a case is brought to us at the Network of Public Interest Lawyers, we look at what do we provide just beyond this case, because we pick lessons from that case. We realized there was a need to push for, say, guidelines.
I see.
Say eviction guidelines. How can evictions be done properly? Because we saw there was a problem with this case. We picked it up and had several engagements with the Ministry of Lands. Unfortunately, last year, they came up with guidelines. To start with, how do you conduct this process? At what time? Yes. During which weather? How do you treat the persons, the mothers, the expectant mothers, the children? It's a comprehensive process. So
don't we have these guidelines, but are largely just neglected? Because you do have the president who say, do not evict anyone during this COVID-19 pandemic. It's still happening. And the guidelines you just mentioned, yes, they are also available, but they're not being implemented. Is that the implementation? Is it the problem?
Of course, for us, the lawyers, we come in when there is a law, yes, there is an actionable right,
yes,
and it is violated. And if the law at least exists, it's a starting point.
Indeed.
So it's a good thing that the guidelines are there. Otherwise, in terms of preparing the case and the evidence, it would be good to point to you did this yeah, arising out of the facts, and you breached this guideline, this provision of the law, and this, and that justifies what probably the damages will be pushing for.
And of course, it also justifies what we are saying right now, that there is collusion from the state or government and these land grabbers who are actually evicting people. Would you agree?
I would agree for the better part. All evictions, like I said, there is always a collusion. For this particular case, like I said, I don't want to go so much into the merits.
That's why the viewer is very, very hesitant to actually give you too much hope, because you have the three arms of government. You have the executive, you have the legislature, you have the judiciary. Am I right? But then one of the arms of government that you are running to is part of the same government that is having these people who are colluding with the land grabbers. That's why they are saying you might not get the court redress that you are looking for.
Of course, I saw earlier there was, you've seen the discussion on torture, but of course when you have a problem, again, you run to police, yes, for protection. Yes, we have to maintain and keep on pushing, because the courts have now been progressive. Judgments are coming out in a positive nature. They're giving structural redress. They give government timelines, come up with these guidelines within these months, push for such remedies. It is, for us who are practicing and pushing for this, it's a positive step. At least the judiciary moved ahead of the executive by putting in place practice directions. That was, you know, the Chief Justice saying, let's put together a team, let it guide on how we can push for this. So I think we have to keep on keeping on. We can't despair. And I hope this case will provide a different way, because it's one thing, you could pursue the state, get a judgment, take centuries to get the award out of the state. But if now the angle is changing to say, we are committing to settle this, and within this financial year, there's a timeline. It is positive. Probably
settlement
it will give
out of court. Yes,
a settlement out of court. It will give. I think a good starting point for.
I hear you, Derek Lutalo, loud and clear. But a compensation out of court, you have viewers that are concerned that it might not, you know, cut off the precedents that you are trying to avoid. Land evictions taking center stage, because you'll be settling this out of court. But then there wouldn't be a big judgment that will compel other would-be land grabbers not to do the same. They would largely be trying to put this under the rag so that it goes away, but it won't remove the problem. Don't you think that settling will not remove the problem?
I think for us, what we do is represent the interests of the litigant.
If they say
the person who comes to us. Right. Yes, as a lawyer, I can't push. If a litigant says, I wish to settle. I've given you an example with this very case over the 258 and now the 40 that are coming through to say, I think I want to settle. When we call these people, they are scattered. Even when we want to meet them in Mubende, others are in Isinjiro. It's a long process. So if a person says, let me get what I claimed for and settle this out of the court, I think it's positive. As a lawyer, I have to respect that right. And a settlement is usually a win-win, because you draft it in your own terms. Such things that she's talking about, I believe if say, they say, give me what I claimed for, but also let me get access for the burial grounds for the remains. Let me get them out. If I resettle somewhere and I can resettle my ancestors there, I think it will be okay, because exhumation going through the proper process is also allowed. If a road is going to go through this place, and sadly that's where my ancestors were buried, and I get adequately compensated within time, I can relocate them for peace, because it's about the peace of those persons.
Derek Lutalo is representing Network of Public Interest Lawyers. We have Rehema Namaganda from, she's a country director, coordinator rather, for FIAN Uganda. Let's talk about these compensations and what your 2 cents are. He gave us his submission. He said, well, if the litigants say they want to settle out of court, he'll do just that. But we are taking a look at precedents. What happens when you settle out of court? It's more like you're, you know, putting this problem under the rug, make it go away. But what happens to other individuals who might fall into the same bracket, like the Kaweri situation, the evictions?
True.
What is the perspective?
I agree, it's a positive step, definitely. But first of all, we need to check why has there been a delay? Isn't this maybe a trick to make people opt for anything given to them? Maybe yes, maybe. I mean, there are circumstances that have caused this delay, but we also can't justify this. Too much delay, 20 years, people claiming to get compensated. So if I tactfully delay people, then I get them to the point where they are like, well, I'm tired of this. Let me just get whatever you're giving me, and then I go. So when you give them, they're actually kneeling and appreciating, oh, this is great, we are so grateful. But what happened within this delay, there are a lot of other costs that they have incurred in not having access to their land. So whereas this is a positive step, I think we need to try think of ways to mitigate against such. So when Derek talks about the eviction guidelines, I think it's one thing to have the guidelines in place. It's another thing for people to be aware that there are even guidelines that should guide the process of eviction if it's to take place. So are people aware of these guidelines? What can we do to create awareness so that someone knows if I'm to be evicted, these are the guidelines. So, and when I'm evicted, this I can have access to justice. I can have access to the court process and the case be settled not in 20 years. All right. So yes, it's a positive step towards the right direction, but I think we need to strongly say no to such delayed justice systems.
Because we did get compensation in 2017, but what makes you so sure we shall get compensation now if the same government repealed that decision?
Well, like Derek is saying, for sure, even the people are tired. So, and there's been a lot of advocacy going on. So we are hopeful that these people will get compensation. But remember, there's another segment of people that have not consented to this, that have not accepted this out-of-court process, and they want to continue with full trial. So we don't know what the future holds for that group of people. Yeah, but we remain hopeful and keep pushing.
What does the future hold for access to land and natural resources for Uganda? David Lutalo, before I let you go.
With the increase in the population and investors coming through, we have to brace ourselves. It won't be easy. But if the state now puts, stamps on the ground to say whoever will come through, we will have to go through the proper process, and the state also, on its own, with its duty to protect now the citizens, says, I will be the example. I will compensate persons, free, prior, and informed consent before I can take their land or their resources. It will be a bonus for us. But if we do not now follow the channels that are available and the state absconds that duty, it will not be a very good thing. It is tough if you go to, say, Karamoja, the mineral exploration, the communities, their land holding system is quite different. You have to create trusts for them to be able now to cede away the land to the investors. And we need the development, but it has to follow the legal process. I believe once we follow the law, which I am here to push for, we will do better. if each
on the
Kaweri
issue, the legal part, Derek, I'm hearing that this land, the investor, that is David Newman, they were given a fake lease. Is it true? And that this land does not belong to the state, but rather Buganda Kingdom. Is it true?
I don't want to discuss the merits of the case. That would push me to that direction.
Indeed.
But what I can say is that the people that were there, who are the people we are representing, ran to court. We picked up the matter. We have had an amendment with the pleadings to now reflect what they want. Some are willing to settle, others are willing to push for the case to get judgment or get, and we respect each party and think that will come through when that is achieved, when the court hearing process is done. We had COVID, we have dates, the matter is fixed, and then courts are not working. So then you face the temptation of fixing another date when an error of election petitions now. Now you will have to fix another date if it is hearing the modalities that are coming through. I saw the head of the land division providing a mechanism now. You will go online. Let us hear the cases, but online. So we'll have, if you're going to represent over 400 plaintiffs, or if they are representatives, you have to work out a way of how they will lead their evidence online. It will be another challenge, but yes, there is hope, and I believe...
The most important question, how can we mitigate against such evictions?
Simply let each party play its role. You as a state protect the citizens, put in place the laws, make sure they're followed up, and let the justice system work fast for those whose rights have been violated. That will be a win for them. And for me, if I'm an investor, let me respect the laws I've found in place. If I do that, it will be easier for my project to be welcomed into that community. And then if there is a breach, if I do not follow that, the remedy should be quick, and it should be one that meets the desired standards. If I go to court in, say, 6 months, I should be able to, if the law pushes for that, I should be able to get my judgment. Otherwise, you have cases going on for 10 years, and they tell you, go back for retrial, such as this one.
All right, Derek, thank you. And lastly, Rehema, what should Ugandans learn from this case?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we need to create awareness of the existence of protective legal frameworks, such as the eviction guidelines he's talking about. People need to know. And when communities know, it's the first step for them to stand for their rights. Indeed. It's easier to mitigate than to have to pursue compensation and all that. So we as organizations supporting people, but also the government. So it's not a matter of putting in place laws, but do people know about those laws? Do they know what it implies? So we need to create awareness. We need to continue sensitizing people. But and then people on ground, they need to also try to fight for their rights before the land is taken. Make noise, like call up organizations, call up people that you think are concerned, and say it out, because there are so many other communities that are facing similar challenges, but nobody's caring. So it's easier to, I think it's easier if we come in to prevent the occurrence of these actions. And then governments that are sending investors should also take responsibility. These are extraterritorial obligations that these governments in Europe and other continents should have. So when you send an investor, mind about what they are doing and the consequences of their actions in the countries where they are investing.
All right. Yeah. Rehema Namagana Bafuma, thank you very much. Derek Lutalo, a lawyer with Network of Public Interest Lawyers, thank you very much for actually bringing out the legal perspective and also the social side. Rehema, thank you very much, both of you. Okay. Of course, this is a case that has been in the news for over 20 years. The evictions happened on August 17th, 2001. Court redress came in 2013. That's what Rehema says when she says, come out quickly so that you make noise and you get help in that regard. My name is Romy Busiku. Let's take a breather. We'll return shortly with more information right here on Morning at 8.